Hey guys, today we are learning about unit rates, complex fractions, and proportions. So let's get to it. Back in 6th grade, you learned that a ratio uses division to compare two numbers. It can be written in three different ways. A over B as a fraction, A to B like in odds, and A to B as well. Okay, so if we are using a ratio, it compares two numbers that are the same label, or at least the same category. So 17 wins to 24 wins would be 17 to 24. And then 17 pop songs to 24 rock songs would be 17 to 24. Since they're both songs, they're considered ratios. But the minute that they change units, they're now considered a ratio with a little bit more to it, called a rate. So a rate is a ratio of two quantities with different units. So 60 miles in 4 hours. Notice that this and this are different units. Same with t-shirts and money. Okay, so if we wanted to, we could even simplify it. 80 miles in 4 hours. How would you simplify that? Well, you would do 20 miles in 1 hour or 20 miles per hour. This takes it even a step further. When it's down to 1 hour, it's considered a unit rate. A unit rate is a rate that compares a quantity to 1 unit of a second quantity. For example, 60 miles per hour. Per 1 hour is a unit rate. Or 50 cents per pound. Since we're only talking about 1 pound, it's a unit rate. So for a unit rate, sometimes you start with a rate and then you simplify it to where the denominator becomes a 1. $5 for 2 pens would become $2.50 for 1 pen, or $2.50 per pen. Make sure you write that down as something that you've tried in your notebook. Okay, so how do we use complex fractions to help us with unit rates? Kelly can run 3 1/3 miles in 21 11/18 minutes. So this is miles per minute, but in this case, we have it as a complex fraction. If we want to know the unit rate of speed, then we need to take this complex fraction and we need to compare it if the fraction on the other side would be 1 minute. So we want to know how far she would go in 1 minute. Remember, for unknowns, we could make a question mark, but now in math, we'd make an X or any variable. Okay, so the simple way to do it is to remember that this is a division problem and to just literally divide miles per minute. So if we did that, we would get 60 over 389 miles for 1 minute. If we wanted to flip it, and we want to know the unit of speed, we don't care about miles per minute. We care about, if we cared about, I should say, for 1 mile, then the 1 would be on top. So we could flip this over and literally do 21 11/18 over 3 1/3 and figure out how much for 1 mile. Okay, either way, you're dividing, okay? So it just depends on what they're asking you. So for unit rate of speed, you would do it like this. If they asked you how far for 1 mile, then you would divide and you would get 6 minutes and 29 seconds, basically. It's 29/60. So this would be your minutes per mile. Okay, it takes Mrs. Petruska 4.5 hours to get to Table Rock Lake, which is 248 5/8 miles away. Why don't you try this one? Express it as a complex fraction, and then what's the unit of speed? In order to do speed, you always do the hours on bottom and the miles on top, or the time always goes on bottom. Okay, go ahead and try it. I'll be back in just a second to show you what I did. Red pen ready. You should have 4.5 miles here. 48 5/8 hours on Oh, I have that completely wrong. I apologize. 4.5 hours goes on bottom. Excuse me. I am so very sorry. And 248 and 5/8 miles go on top. So if we wanted the unit rate of speed, we would take 248 and 5/8 in our calculator, and we would divide it by 4.5, which gives us 55 and 1/4 miles per hour. Okay, Justin is making a blanket for Curly. If he buys 2 1/8 yards of fabric for $18.75, what's the unit cost? So we always divide money by items. Okay, write this down. This is incredibly important. Star it in your notes. Okay, so money divided by items. So we take 18.75 divided by 2 1/8. Okay, when we do that, we get this, $8.8235. Oh my goodness. So when we're looking, this right here up until this point is money. But we have to look at this 3 in order to adhere to rounding. So whenever you use money, you always go to the hundredths place because that's your pennies, 82 pennies. But then the 3 has to tell the 2 something. Either stay a 2 or let's add 1 more penny onto you because I'm a 5 or I'm more. So 4 or less it stays, 5 or more it grows. Okay? So $8.82 because the 3 tells the 2 to stay the same. All right. On this one, Mrs. Petruska needs dog treats for Curly. Which should I buy from based on the price? So which store should I get it from? Target or Walmart? You decide. Go ahead for me, and I will be back in just a second to show you what I did. You should be using your calculator for these problems. That's totally a-okay. So in the first one, you've got 932 divided by 4, and you get $2.33, and this is per box. Then at Walmart, you are dividing 14 by 6, and you get $2.33 with a 3 repeating. Okay, just a second ago, I told you to round, right? Here, when you rounded, you didn't have to, but here we do have to, and it would be $2.33. So some might say it doesn't matter where you go, right? But the difference is when you're looking for the better price, you do not round completely. When I'm looking for the better price, I would extend this 1 more decimal because this is a repeating 3. This goes on forever. And I look at this as 33 with zeros repeating versus 33 with 3s repeating. So Walmart is actually more expensive because if I was buying more than 1, I would go to Target. Make sense? Okay, so make sure you're careful when you're doing ones like that. And that's all I have for you today right now with complex fractions and unit rates. We're going to start proportions, okay? So this is part 2 of the video. So with proportions, we first start with cross products, and we know that cross products of every proportion are equal. For example, we know 4/5 equals 20/25 because this times 5 and this times 5 are the same, okay? But what if these numbers are huge and I can't find an easy, quick way to see that they are the same? Then I grab my calculator and I use cross products. I literally multiply 5 times 20 and 4 times 25. And if I get the same number, then I know that they are proportionate. Write that down. Cross products of a proportion are equal. So to solve for an unknown, you multiply the cross products that contain both numbers and divide by the number that contains the unknown. For example, 6 times 9 and 3 times b. That gives us a regular one-step equation, right? 3b equals 54. So I divide both sides by 3 and I get b equaling 18. So 6th grade way told us you just multiply by a 3, right? But eventually, these are going to grow to become more complex. So it's important to have different strategies. So this strategy is called cross products. Please make sure that you are using cross products during this video to solve all of them, even if they seem relatively easy. So the ratio of boys to girls is 10 to 8. Boys being 10, girls being 8. If there are 15 boys in the class, how many girls are there? So we know for every 10 boys, there are 8 girls. And we know that there are 15 boys. So I'm missing the girls out of these if there are 15 boys. So the first thing that we do is we set up a proportion. 10 boys to 8 girls. Now the key to proportions is that you have to keep their units the same. So if you know that there are boys and you put them in the numerator, then they must stay in the numerator over here with this 15. And your girls, since you put them in the denominator, must stay in the denominator. So now we can use cross products. We take 8 times 15, and then we take 10 times g. Because there isn't a nice quick way, well there is, but multiplying by decimals isn't as fun, right? So 10 times g gives us 10g, and this should be a dot. I apologize for that error. And 15 times 8 gives you 120. So divide by 10 and you get g equals 12. So yesterday you bought 8 folders for $4. Today you're buying 5 more folders. So we want to know how much you're going to pay for those 5 folders today. Okay, you're not buying a total of 13. You've already bought these 8. You're buying 5 now. So set up your proportion and I'll be back in just a second to show you what I did. Okay, so the first step here is you bought for $4 8 folders. So when you set up the unknown, it goes with the money and 5 for your folders. We always put the money on top. Remember, money over items. So 4 times 5 gives us 20, equaling 8 times x. So what we need to do is divide both sides by 8, and we're left with x equaling 2.5. But that's not how we write money. So make sure that you put your 0 after the 5 and not before. This isn't $2.05, it's $2.50. Okay, so that would be for 5 folders. Okay, let's take this all a step further. What if you don't have all the information you need right away? Sometimes you have to dig a little bit deeper. In our class, the ratio of boys to girls is 5 boys to 7 girls. What if there are 36 students in our class? How many are girls? So our original ratio is 5 to 7. We have 5 boys and 7 girls. Now here's where it gets a little complicated. How many students is that? Because we don't want to know boys to girls. If we have 36 boys, how many girls are there? They say if we have 36 students, how many girls are there? So our goal here is to figure out girls, X amount of girls, if there are 36 students. Well, we know that there are 7 girls and 5 boys. So if there are 7 girls, how many students are there if there are 7 and 5? Add them together and we get 12. So there are 7 girls out of 12 students. Make sense? So now we do cross products. 12 times x gives you 12x. 7 times 36 gives you 252. So now we divide by 12, and we know that there are x equals 21, and this would be our girls in the class. So out of 36 students, there are 21 girls. All right, your turn. Try this one for me, and I'll be back in just a second to show you what I did. There are 27 animals in a shelter, so the ratio of cats to dogs is 2 to 7. So 2 out of 7, these are or not 2 out of 7, these are 2, 7 cats, 2 dogs. So if we want to know how many dogs there are 7 dogs out of 9 animals. So now we can set that up. If there are 27 animals, how many of them are dogs? So let's try it again. 7 times 27 gives us 189, and that equals 9x. So divide by 9. Oh, and it just so happens that our answer again is 21, but this time it's 21 dogs.